Now that Nayu and Hickey knew each other's names, the train rides were bound to feel different, or so the other passengers hoped. For them, this was a huge step forward, and they were eager to see what might happen next. Unfortunately, today didn't go as anyone had planned. Neither Hickey nor Nayu managed to get a seat on the train, leaving the passengers silently disappointed. The situation was beyond their control, and they could only watch as their hopes for another interaction were dashed. Hickey glanced over at Nayu, trying to catch a glimpse of what she was doing. He felt a pang of disappointment, wishing he had been able to sit next to her so he could thank her properly for returning his ID the day before. The three passengers shared the same sentiment but knew there was nothing they could do at the moment. Accepting the outcome, they decided to meet at a restaurant later to talk things over. At the bustling restaurant, the old man manager, the office lady, and the university student gathered to share their thoughts. While they couldn't hide their disappointment, they also acknowledged the progress that had been made. Things hadn't gone as they'd hoped today, but at least Nayu and Hickey had acknowledged each other. That alone was enough to lift their spirits, and they cheered to celebrate this small victory. Meanwhile, Hickey was on the train heading home, surrounded by his friends. As he recounted the events of the previous day, one of his friends exclaimed in shock, amazed that Hickey had learned the girl's name. His excitement was contagious, but it didn't go unnoticed by the other passengers. Kiri, sitting nearby, told Hickey's friend to keep his voice down, reminding him that many passengers were asleep after a long day at work. Realizing they had been too loud, Hickey and his friend quickly calmed down. Hickey, too, reminded himself to stay composed, knowing that there would be more chances to let his excitement out later. Hickey's friend, barely able to contain his excitement, asked what he meant by finding out the girl's name. He couldn't believe that Hickey, of all people, had managed to ask a girl for her name. Hickey clarified that it wasn't like that at all, it had happened by chance. He explained how he had accidentally left his student ID on his seat, and Nayu had gone out of her way to jump off the train to return it to him. As he recounted the story, Hickey couldn't help but remember Nayu's intense gaze and her kindness. He admitted it was hard to explain, but it wasn't just about learning her name, it was about getting to know her as a person. Now that he understood what kind of person Nayu was, it made him genuinely happy. Hickey's friend began to realize that Hickey's feelings for Nayu were much deeper than he had thought. Meanwhile, Kiri smiled, thinking that Hickey and Nayu were just like two peas in a pod. The three passengers were already getting tipsy as they continued discussing Hickey and Nayu. The office lady speculated that Hickey was probably talking to Kiri about the whole situation during their journey home, and that he might even be saying he'd fallen in love with Nayu all over again. The old man, unable to contain his excitement, shouted that he wished he could watch Hickey talking to his friends about it, preferably while enjoying a beer. The office lady buried her face in embarrassment, thinking the old man was getting way too excited and dangerously close to being weird. The university student, sipping his beer, quietly decided that if the old man got too drunk, he'd pretend not to know him and slip away. Still, even he couldn't resist the excitement. He admitted that he'd love to see Hickey after school one day to learn more about the whole situation. The office lady voiced her concern, saying that if the atmosphere between Hickey and Nayu was already so tense in the morning, it would likely be even more intense the next day after a full day had passed. She was convinced that romance would be thick in the air soon. The old man manager, however, remained skeptical. He doubted anything significant would change, even though Hickey and Nayu now knew each other's names. He believed the only difference might be Hickey thinking about her more often. The university student disagreed, arguing that simply knowing each other's names could lead to major changes. On the train, Hickey's friend teased him, asking if he had already searched for Nayu on social media now that he knew her name. Hickey froze, feeling embarrassed because he had indeed spent the previous night trying to find her online. Meanwhile, the university student was enthusiastically explaining this exact scenario to the others. He said that since Hickey now knew both Nayu's name and her school, it would be entirely possible for him to find her social media profile. If that happened, he could even send her a direct message, which could open up a whole new way for them to connect. The old man manager, alarmed, shouted that if Hickey started texting Nayu on social media, It would mean their relationship might develop outside the morning train. To him, that possibility was deeply disappointing. The office lady shared his concern, adding that she doubted Nayu used her real name on social media. She also thought that guys randomly sliding into a girl's DMs was super creepy. As the three debated, the university student got busy trying to search for Nayu on every social media app he could think of. Despite his efforts, he came up empty-handed. Meanwhile, on the train, Hickey nervously tried to explain to his friends that it would be impossible to find anything on social media with just a name and a school. But his friends saw right through him. They realized that Hickey had already searched for Nayu online and had come up empty-handed. At the restaurant, the old man manager expressed his belief that Hickey wouldn't go snooping into someone else's private life. He seemed confident that Hickey wouldn't take things that far. The office lady laughed, pointing out that Hickey would probably do it anyway, even if he told himself he shouldn't. The university student, on the other hand, was disappointed that he couldn't find Nayu's account anywhere. He even admitted that he couldn't find an account for Hickey either. Despite their differing opinions, the three passengers agreed on one thing: getting so worked up over just a name was the true essence of youth. They reminisced about their own experiences, recalling how even being in the same school didn't guarantee knowing someone's name, especially if they were in a different class. They all reminisced about their youth, pretending to meet up with friends from a different class just to find out someone's name, using fortune-telling to check compatibility with both your names and subconsciously doodling both your names next to each other on your notepad in class, or the best one that only the OGs had done, singing a popular love song but replacing the names in it with yours and theirs. As they continued sharing, the office lady recalled writing her crush's name on an eraser and trying to use it up before anyone noticed. The old man agreed with a chuckle, reminiscing about how nerve-wracking it was to keep the eraser hidden. Their laughter filled the restaurant as they realized just how universal these youthful antics were. The old man agreed that Hickey might do something like that, but the university student laughed and disagreed, saying Hickey wasn't in elementary school and wouldn't do something so childish. The student clearly thought too highly of Hickey, because on the train, Hickey was panicking. When his friends asked to see his eraser, he clung to his backpack like his life depended on it. He knew that if they found out the truth, it would be too embarrassing. Hickey had indeed written Nayu's name on his eraser, and his panicked expressions gave him away. His friends quickly figured it out. One of them, still annoyed that only Hickey seemed to be enjoying his youth, grumbled about wanting a cute junior to come and confess her love to him. Kiri laughed, teasing that if he kept saying things like that, it would never happen. Meanwhile, Hickey was still clutching his backpack, painfully aware of how easy he was to read. That's when his friend whispered to Kiri, saying he had a great idea. Now that they knew Nayu's name in school, he suggested Kiri could use his connections to find out her full name, and maybe even her contact details. Kiri shook his head, saying Hickey's friend was being really insensitive if he thought Hickey needed their help with this. While Hickey wondered what the two were whispering about, Kiri smiled and explained his point. He told Hickey's friend that his idea wasn't a good one. It was like telling a rock climber about some nearby stairs. You have to understand that the climber is doing it for the journey, not just the destination. Kiri had figured out Hickey's mindset. He explained that if Hickey wanted to know more about Nayu, he'd ask her himself when the time was right. Hickey would get there eventually in his own way. Kiri added that he just wanted to enjoy the show and would stick around for all of Hickey's ups and downs. Back at home, Hickey found himself searching for Nayu on social media again. He knew she probably didn't use it, but he couldn't stop himself from looking. At the same time, Nayu was doing the same thing at her place, unable to find Hickey online. They both realized they couldn't keep obsessing over this, but they couldn't help it. Just because they now knew each other's names didn't mean anything had changed. They were both confused, blushing, and lost in thoughts of each other. Even the thought of saying each other's names made them smile and gave them goosebumps. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't stop thinking about one another. They started to panic, knowing they had to calm down before they saw each other again on the train tomorrow. Meanwhile, the three passengers had finally left the bar. The old man manager was now very drunk, cheering loudly on the street as they walked. They all agreed they should meet like this more often. The university student was deep in thought when the office lady asked if something was wrong. He snapped back to reality and said he was just thinking about Nayu and Hickey. He was worried that from now on, those two would secretly be whispering each other's names in their heads while sitting next to each other, and the only ones who wouldn't notice were Hickey and Nayu themselves. The office lady yelled at him not to ruin the mood, while the old man suggested they head to another bar. As for the old man manager, he missed his last train home that night, but that wasn't important right now. The next day, it was raining, and somehow, everyone managed to catch the train. They were all soaked, and the office lady grumbled, saying it wasn't supposed to rain that morning. Despite the mess, the three passengers stayed calm. Nayu and Hickey were sitting next to each other today, and Nayu was drenched too. She frantically searched through her bag for a towel but couldn't find one. Panicking, she couldn't even locate a handkerchief and felt herself getting more stressed by the second. Then suddenly, she heard Hickey's voice. She looked up to find him offering her his towel. The three passengers froze, shocked. They couldn't believe it. How did Hickey suddenly have the guts to do something like this? Hickey and Nayu exchanged nervous glances. Without saying anything more, Nayu took the towel and began drying her hair. Her heart raced as she couldn't believe this was actually happening. She was using Hickey's towel. Hickey, on the other hand, turned bright red, thinking about Nayu using it. He wondered if he'd crossed a line in the heat of the moment. Their hearts pounded louder than the sound of the train, and Nayu started to panic, wondering if her face was turning red. Hickey, meanwhile, questioned why he was feeling so flustered just from lending Nayu his towel. He also started to worry if he'd washed it recently. Meanwhile, the three passengers had completely forgotten about their own situation. They quietly thanked the rain for bringing this moment. They quickly texted each other, the office lady saying she never thought she'd witness something so amazing. The manager couldn't believe the shy Hickey had managed to do something so bold. The university students still had faith in Hickey, saying that Hickey always knew how to act smoothly in situations like this. The university students silently cheered for Hickey, thinking this was his chance. He turned to the other two and asked what they would do if they borrowed someone else's towel. The office lady quickly texted that you'd wash the towel and return it. The university student responded, saying that's the usual thing to do. But what if you didn't have each other's contact information? The office lady and the old man were shocked, slowly starting to piece together the puzzle. The university student agreed, texting that it didn't matter if you arranged to meet up or sent it to their address. There was a good chance you'd end up exchanging contact information unless Hickey tried to act humble and insisted it wasn't necessary to return it. The university student was sure Hickey would try to act humble, but the office lady was confident in Nayu. She believed Nayu seemed like the responsible type, and even if Hickey tried to be modest, Nayu would definitely wash the towel and return it. The manager agreed with her too. Nayu was deep in thought. After Hickey had lent her the towel, he mentioned that he was just returning the favor. Nayu wondered what he meant. Was he talking about the student ID, or when she had woken him up that morning so he wouldn't miss his stop? In her mind, it was Hickey who had been the one helping her. She buried her face in the towel, feeling happy that he remembered all those little things. As she wiped her face, she smelled the towel and blushed. It had a completely different fabric softener scent from what they used at her house. She lost herself in the smell, completely unaware of her surroundings. Suddenly, Hickey glanced at her and was shocked. Nayu quickly realized what she was doing and saw that Hickey had noticed her sniffing his towel. The other passengers were stunned. They never expected to witness something like this. Nayu turned away, embarrassed, while Hickey quickly looked out the window, trying to compose himself. The three passengers couldn't believe what they had just seen. They exchanged looks, still processing the moment. Hickey and Nayu both tried to stay calm, but their hearts were racing in sync. Nayu couldn't believe it. She had just sniffed a towel she borrowed from a boy. Hickey wasn't sure if what he had seen was real or just his imagination running wild. The office lady texted the others, wondering if Hickey would finally realize Nayu's feelings, even without exchanging contact information. The university student agreed, texting that it might go even further than that. Meanwhile, Nayu and Hickey's panic was clear from the loud thumping of their hearts. Nayu was freaking out, wondering if Hickey had seen her sniffing the towel. She feared that now he'd think she was a total weirdo. while Hickey couldn't understand why anyone would sniff someone else's towel. The three passengers, having seen enough of the world, knew exactly why Nayu had sniffed something that smelled like Hickey. But Hickey was completely clueless. He panicked, wondering if his towel smelled bad. He nervously spoke up, apologizing to Nayu and saying he must have picked up the towel from the clubroom. Nayu, confused, asked what he was talking about. Even the three passengers were stunned by Hickey's conclusion. The office lady couldn't figure out how he'd come to this idea or why anyone would take a big sniff of an old, smelly towel. Nayu, realizing what was happening, tried to cover up, blurting out that the towel didn't smell damp and didn't smell like anything at all. The truth was far from that, but Nayu scrambled to handle the situation, lying that the towel had no smell. Meanwhile, Hickey was panicking even more inside. He was now sure that the towel smelled bad, and that's why Nayu wasn't speaking clearly. Hickey desperately wanted to get his towel back, so he gathered all his strength and asked Nayu if she was dry now and if he could take the towel back. Nayu replied that she had planned on washing it and returning it later. The three passengers, who had been watching the whole scene unfold, were starting to get frustrated with Hickey. They knew that if he pushed for the towel now, he might lose his chance to get Nayu's contact info. They silently hoped that Nayu would hold her ground. While Hickey was trying to figure out how to get the towel back, Nayu was in a bit of a panic. She knew it was her fault for sniffing the towel earlier, even though it didn't smell bad at all. But Hickey had misunderstood. She thought the situation would be resolved if he just smelled the towel himself to confirm it. However, as she thought about giving it back to him for that reason, she suddenly remembered that she had just used the towel to wipe herself. Her face went bright red, and she quickly insisted that she would definitely wash it before returning it. Hickey, however, wouldn't let it go. He told her not to worry about it, but Nayu wasn't sure if the towel would smell strange now, and she didn't want to risk it. She argued and pleaded, asking if she could at least wash it first, but Hickey was firm. Then, in a moment of desperation, he blurted out that he needed the towel for his gym class later. Nayu quickly countered, saying she'd just buy him a new one and suggested they go to the store before school. The three passengers were on the edge of their seats, unable to handle the roller coaster of emotions. Suddenly, Nayu jumped up, and Hickey quickly apologized, realizing he'd made her uncomfortable. But Nayu insisted that she wasn't just being polite, she truly meant it. Nayu looked at Hickey, clutching her bag tightly. Blushing, she yelled out that the reason she smelled the towel was because it smelled really good. She was about to say his name and explain the real reason, but suddenly stopped herself. The three passengers gasped at her confession, but they were disappointed when Nayu didn't finish what she was about to say. Hickey started to blush, wondering if Nayu was about to say his name, but she quickly added that she just smelled a different fabric softener than the one they use at her home. Both Nayu and Hickey settled back into their seats, and Nayu nervously said she would wash the towel and return it. Inside, she was still panicking over almost saying Hickey's name. Hickey, on the other hand, agreed that it was fine but couldn't help wondering if she had actually said his name. He quickly dismissed the thought as just his imagination. The three passengers were beside themselves, fully understanding what had just happened. They were eager to see what would happen next, but their imaginations ran wild, imagining things far more dramatic than what actually happened. The next day, Nayu returned the towel to Hickey on the train and thanked him. Meanwhile, the office lady texted, saying Hickey and Nayu hadn't even exchanged contact information, and blamed the university student for making up that whole scenario. The university student defended himself, though, insisting he wasn't entirely wrong. It was early morning, and Hickey sat alone in his usual seat on the train. As he thought about the recent incidents with Nayu, the ID mix-up, and the towel exchange, he realized things seemed to be going well between them. Hickey had always assumed that his one-sided crush on someone he only saw during his daily commute would never lead anywhere, especially since he didn't even know her name. But now it felt like things might actually change. Maybe, just maybe, this could go somewhere. Then the train stopped, and Hickey froze in shock. In front of him was a sight that left him speechless. The three passengers were stunned as they overheard a conversation between Nayu and another guy. He was talking about how they had stayed up late the night before, sharing their problems. Hickey felt as though his soul was slowly leaving his body as he watched Nayu and this guy talk and smile at each other. The three passengers were equally shocked, their eyes locked on the scene. The office lady immediately texted the others, wondering who this new, handsome man was. The manager, feeling uneasy, wondered if he was Nayu's boyfriend, and if so, he didn't approve. The university student scolded them all, telling them they were acting like Nayu's parents. He told them to calm down and listen closely to understand what was really going on. Hickey, too, was listening intently. He heard the guy, Sakurai, tell Nayu that he was disappointed for upsetting someone named Shizuku. They continued talking about school, and Hickey quickly pieced it together. The guy was wearing the same school uniform as Nayu, and from the way they were speaking, it was clear that he was her classmate. The university student came to the same conclusion but added more details. He explained to the others that Sakurai was actually Nayu's friend Shizuku's boyfriend. It seemed like he was asking Nayu for advice on what to do for Shizuku's birthday. Sakurai blushed as he talked about Shizuku's cute smile and mentioned that he wanted to see her smile even more on her special day. He didn't want to miss that opportunity. Nayu smiled and reminded him of the surprise flash mob he did for Shizuku's birthday last year. She teased him, saying he shouldn't repeat that idea this time. The three passengers finally relaxed, and the university student agreed that hearing this, Sakurai didn't seem like a threat or a rival. Hickey smiled too, realizing what was really going on. The old man let out a sigh of relief and texted the others, saying he wasn't interested in Sakurai's love life anymore. Then, Sakurai asked if he could get Nayu's opinion on something. He asked what she would do if she were in his situation, planning a birthday for her boyfriend. Nayu froze, embarrassed by the question, and so did Hickey and the three passengers, who were all shocked but eager to hear Nayu's answer. Nayu blurted out, flustered, that she didn't know anything about that kind of thing and that she didn't even have a boyfriend. Sakurai seemed disappointed and asked if she had any good ideas for him, something that would surprise a girl. At that moment, Hickey, the king of obliviousness, finally realized that Nayu didn't have a boyfriend after all. The three of them were getting more and more invested in the conversation, eager to hear Nayu's thoughts on an ideal birthday with her boyfriend. They all agreed it was the perfect opportunity to learn about her views on love. Nayu, however, was feeling nervous with Hickey sitting right behind her. She wasn't sure how to answer Sakurai's question, but she also wanted to make sure both her friend and Sakurai had a good birthday. Nayu swallowed her nerves and said she was still unsure about it. She thought surprises were nice, but if it were up to her, she'd rather just play games or go on a train ride somewhere. She blushed as she added that it wouldn't really matter what they did. For her, the most important thing would be having them all to herself, and she'd want to give them all of her attention, too. It felt like the entire train was blushing at Nayu's heartfelt words. The office lady was impressed by how passionate Nayu was. Sakurai smiled, agreeing with Nayu. He explained that he loves being around Shizuku and wants to make her happy. Nayu said she understood exactly what he meant. Meanwhile, the university student noticed that Nayu had mentioned playing games on the train, which made him think she was imagining being with Hickey. Hickey, still blushing, quickly pulled out his notepad and started writing down what Nayu had said. The old man manager noticed this too and quickly texted the others. The office lady texted, saying this was a valuable lesson that couldn't be learned in the classroom. Sakurai then asked Nayu what she thought about a present, mentioning that he had already composed an original romantic love song for her. Nayu panicked. She wasn't sure how to answer, but she knew she had to help for Shizuku's sake. She understood that Shizuku and Sakurai's happiness might depend on her advice. After a moment of thought, Nayu said she'd be happy with something that came from the heart. She added that she'd love to go to the arcade and play games together. Then, he could give her the cuddly toy they won as her gift. The three passengers nearly had tears in their eyes, unable to handle the sweetness. Hickey was on the verge of tears too, secretly wishing he could be the one giving Nayu that gift. Little did he know, Nayu was saying all this while thinking about him. Hickey was too busy taking notes, and Sakurai agreed with Nayu, saying he'd think of something like that on top of the other things he had already planned. The office lady texted the others, saying that Nayu seemed like the kind of girl who valued memories over getting tons of presents. Meanwhile, Nayu's face turned completely red. She couldn't take it anymore and decided to change the subject. The university student texted, saying that this might be the most they'd ever heard Nayu talk. The office lady agreed, texting that it's different when you're just talking to a friend. While Hickey was writing his notes, he overheard Sakurai calling Nayu by her first name, casually, without any formalities. A pit formed in his stomach. He wished he could be close enough to Nayu to call her by her name without the formal distance. The old man manager noticed too, texting the others that Sakurai was getting too comfortable. The office lady replied, saying it was fine since Sakurai was Nayu's friend's boyfriend. The three passengers agreed, though, that this had to be tough for Hickey. Hickey felt lost. He thought back on his past interactions with Nayu and how they had talked a bit recently, but now seeing her and Sakurai so relaxed with each other made Hickey feel foolish. He couldn't help but imagine how different things would be if he went to the same school as Nayu, if they were in the same class. They'd be together every day, from the first bell to the last. They wouldn't have had to search for each other's names. They would have just known. They wouldn't need to think about finding common ground to talk about. As Hickey's stop approached, he stepped off the train, still lost in thought. He knew that things would be easier if he and Nayu were in the same school, but given his situation, he was making good progress. He didn't have the luxury of being in the same school as her, like the others, and had to take things one step at a time, just like Kiri had told him. Hickey watched the train pull away and straightened up, reminding himself to take Kiri's advice to heart. Meanwhile, Nayu felt the same way. She wished she could talk to Hickey the way she talked to Sakurai. Hickey understood that he still had a long way to go, but at least he was on the right path. And, importantly, he had learned that Nayu was single.